Okay, so welcome everybody. Open Source Committee meeting April 26th. I know I shared the agenda quite late, but it was updated here in the active notes as of just a day or two ago. What we're going to look at today here, we do want to nominate a vice chair before we lose NPJ here at the end. So there has been a nominee of Sandeep to take on the vice chair or sit in that vice chair role for now. We'll also look at Project Framework Working Group, how that went, any updates from the OSO team here, Open Source Office. We'll still look at the committee member appointment process, if anybody has any additional questions, concerns, contributions. And then we're going to talk about some leads for our working groups here. Since MPJ is moving on, we will need to replace the lead for those groups. And I do also want to encourage anybody who's willing or ready and not already participating in a working group. Let's see who else wants to join. That way we're getting at least some good contributions that way, sharing those thoughts. And with that, we can get started here. Are there any missing nominations for the vice chair role other than Sandeep? Take silence as golden. And I'm going to be looking for these here if I can get some reactions, I guess, from everybody. We've got about 8 people that aren't me. All right. So I believe I am showing that as more than half of who we have present here. So consider that who's present here as the quorum. I will make sure to denote that accordingly. Sandeep, we will now show you as the vice chair of the Open Source Committee here. Okay? Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm happy to contribute as much as I can.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. All right, moving on, I guess I'll go to Bogdan here. Let's get a quick update on how the Project Framework Working Group meeting went and what we're looking at moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Tax. So we had the first meeting for the working group on Wednesday, participating Alex and Silona, Tax, and myself. So the main discussion was about how this framework should be looking. So initially I was proposing a kind of phases, and then describing each phase where the projects might fall in, and so on and so on. Then Silona came with a good idea, in my opinion, to not be too prescriptive, and because Silona said that there are other places and other committees and other working groups that are thinking on the same direction, and trying to define more like a template, and based on that template to let other entities to come in with their approach, or to fill in the blanks. For sure, there are a lot of pros for this approach, but I want to highlight a thing that could be a bit challenging, let's say, is the time. Personally, I have a deadline in defining this framework, and I think that the whole committee committed already on a deadline. We should have in mind that by the end of the year, half of the projects should be assessed according to this framework. So for me, this means like the framework itself should be well established, going through a feedback loop and everything being set by the end of this quarter to have time to do the assessment or the audits for the projects. Now, I don't know if we'll have the time by the end of the quarter to go through all committees, all working groups, and so on. Please, Selona.
I was just holding my hand to talk after you were finished to sit there and bolster up some of what you were saying.
No, this was the, let's say, the short description of what we discussed and my own perspective. Please go ahead.
Yeah, because like, just to like, I guess, give a little bit more context on it. You know, there is the ecosystem group, and then there is the civics group. And they're working a lot on like, how do we bring in all of, you know, like Charles talks a lot about, you know, the singular place, basically the single source of truth, whatever anyone else wants to call it, that's what I call it. And on the single source of truth, having it so that we can have all these different ideas coming in and having a good way for us all to be able to come together on it. And that's what the ecosystem group is doing. And then on the civics group, they're talking about the productization of things. While with all of the other different groups that I'm talking with, they're all talking about the other aspects in regards to the release management portions and all of those. And so the work that you two are doing works in well with that, where we're going to be, where we don't sit there and tell every single project what their maintainers agreement looks like or what their contributing agreement looks like, because that would be overstepping our bounds. I'm sure that, you know, a couple people on this phone call wouldn't appreciate that, right? Ronald, if I came in and told you, oh, for the code that you're putting in here, this is how you must do it. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to sit there and say, here's the basics that we expect to see. But then people can go through and create their own constructs. And so that's what we were talking about on the templates.
Yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts? Opinions?
So it sounds like we're pretty much saying we can't do anything because we need input from other people, and so then I guess we just need to park this, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. What I'm saying is we need to create these templates, but the problem is like we were trying to go too much in regards to ideation and funding, and that's not really within the purview of this committee. In that, do you see what I'm saying? The other committees are making those decisions, and that's what we were talking about, is that they're talking about how do we do these different things in regards to interoperating with Catalyst and the Treasury and CF and all of that. And so when it comes to some of the ideation portions, that's going to probably be more external than in here. In here, it's basically, are people doing the basic open source coding practices well? Does that make sense?
Oh, I see. So this is about the bit that Bogdan was kind of had in his previous thing he was showing. He had the section that came before something got kind of accepted. Yeah, well, yeah. I think several of us thought that we probably don't necessarily want to focus on that anyway. So I think that
no. Yeah, and that's why I'm sitting there saying is it's great for the open source committee to come in and sit there and say, this is how we do open source well. Right? This is how, you know, this is how you should do a good maintainers agreement. This is what we're looking for in regards to a good contributors agreement. You know, we should be doing CLAs. You know, there's a bunch of different stuff like that, you know, we should be informing Intersect in regards to how to do and what to do. It's just that we shouldn't be dictatorial towards those projects, right? Because like right now it's like 42 repos. And if we go in and we tell each of those groups, this is how you must run yourself, that's not going to be, you know, it's like at Hyperledger, for example, there was certain things where I'm like, no, really, you have to have a license, you have to have a maintainers page, you have to, you know, there were basics that you had to have. But for the most part of it, I didn't tell them how to write them, right? It's like, no, you need to have a maintainers agreement and how maintainers get through the process and things of that nature. But, you know, they might have a different thing, you know, like if we're doing something like, you know, core, you know, they're going to have some Haskell requirements, right? And we're not going to sit there and tell them what those must be, but say they're doing an app where you don't have to have the same kind of rigorous requirements, right? So becoming a maintainer for core is very different than becoming a maintainer for an app. And so what we're trying to do instead is give them templates and guidance on doing that and creating that, but not telling them what to do. Does that make sense, Michael?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I also shared here in the chat the meeting notes from the meeting. We already set the next meeting for the next week on Wednesday, May 1st. So by then I will have something prepared in order to cover everything that was discussed. And starting with this metrics, I was showing in the meeting 2 days ago a kind of metrics, that's a framework that we are using inside of Modus, the product strategy department. For sure, it's created for assessing the product maturity level, but my thought was to modify and adapt this matrix to the open source world. So I already changed dimensions and the maturity levels or the stage of the projects, and I will iterate on this matrix, and I will discuss on next Wednesday with the working group to see if it's a good path to follow.
All right. Anything else for project framework from the group, from the committee here?
Oh, I have one little bitty thing. One of the things that might clarify some of this for Michael is Bogdan and I purposely were talking about project instead of product.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I think when we discussed last time, I think we will. Yeah, I 100% agree. That's what we should be focusing on. Yeah. I don't think we should have anything to say about product anything.
Right. And so that's why I was sitting there saying, oh, we have some stuff originally in like the strategy where I'm like, I don't know if we get to have that or not. I was dismayed, Terrence, to see what you were saying about the security stuff, especially since that hasn't been opened up at all yet. You know, the TSC stuff and some of those different pieces, I haven't seen that opened up in regards to, but they're saying now that the security thing is under the TSC instead of under the OSC. Is that what you were saying on the note in chat?
Where was that? I'm sorry.
I think in one of the notes, and I thought it was in Discord, you sat there and said that there's another work group that's specific for security that's under the TSC.
No, I didn't have it that way. The only thing I have noted about that is that we're going to talk about who is going to be the lead member of those, but there was internal mention of, hey, there was a security working group, but there's not one currently.
Okay, there was
disbanded,
one. Okay.
but
Gotcha.
there are still consistent meeting notes, so that may have been disbanded in error, is my understanding.
Okay. I understand.
Alex?
Yeah, I was writing the minutes for the meeting, and I was recalling your discussion, Terence and Silona, and you were discussing some specific technical tools to be used. I tried to capture that, but I'm pretty sure I forgot something. So if you could like take a brief look at the minutes and see the relevant reading links, and if something missing, just comment so that I add on the minutes. Thank you.
So that would be great. Alex, could you email that to me or ping me with it so that it can get on my task list? Otherwise, I'm gonna forget it.
All right.
With the link, because then I have to go hunting.
Yeah, please go ahead and send that to me as well. Sandeep.
I posted it in the Matrix, in our Matrix channel.
Oh, in the Matrix channel? Okay.
Yeah.
Sandeep, go ahead.
Yep. Thank you. My point is about the project lifecycle framework. Is a part of this, I don't know, I haven't read the full document yet, but one thing that comes to my mind is about the reporting and an overview dashboard. I mean, there are 39 projects. There will be say 49 or 59 later on, and having an overview of all the projects that are there and the life cycle of them. So somehow represented it to the community, and that could be part of the template yourself that can be picked up, and then the reporting dashboard can be generated. It's not too much, say, forcing that they have to follow the template, but it would be nice to have that auto-generated based on that somehow. Just to raise a point on that, I think reporting is pretty important because too many projects, too many status. Would be nice to have an overview as a part of the life cycle.
So you mean reporting to understand where each project is situated, right? Like in kind of real time somehow.
Yes, I've seen some projects having listing those projects under this different life cycle status. But it would be nice to have that within the project yourself and be that auto-generated, because the project maintainers can update that, and based on that, if it is everything is in Git, then that can be auto-generated. Now that we are establishing the framework, having that, if this stays introduced, is probably more efficient than having to say later on as the project maintainers to add that.
Yeah, sure.
Solana?
Yes. So we are talking about that, Sandeep, on the product side because of the funding aspects as to what are going to be the ongoing, not so much reporting as much as monitoring and observation. Because talking with Chris over at Catalyst, he says that he basically has a really difficult time getting people to do their reports. And I understand that because that's not what developers normally do. You typically have to have middle managers in place that do all of that stuff, and that's what they do. It's an unsung thing because we all hate doing it. Even the middle managers hate doing it. But we were talking about how to incorporate things so that it would be more about the monitoring and the observability and the tools. And that's part of the conversation that Terrence was also in, is looking at some of those different tools to sit there and say, yes, we have the GitHub thing, but also looking at the Bitergia stuff, and also maybe having some custom stuff done. And then there's also some stuff that they would like to have interact with things like Catalyst and others for that. So we're definitely looking at that, but I have to admit, we've been looking at it more from a productization point of view, and we do need to get together, and Terrence can talk about this too, that we have been talking with Bitergia on the open source developer side, which is normally Git, but there are other things where we would also probably like to monitor on that. You know, one of the things I did at PayPal is I did enterprise search, where I took GitHub, 140,000 repos, by the way. We were the largest implementation of GitHub Enterprise in that time. 5,000 Slack channels, a Confluence that was so big it took 2 minutes to search, Rally, Jira, and 4 other internal developer databases that I was in charge of, and put it all into one thing so that we could actually have Kibana sitting on top of it and generate all the dashboards that we needed. It ended up being a little bit not GDPR compliant, and well, not GDPR, but German compliant, because I could tell you what developers were doing every second of the day. But we're hoping to do something not quite that invasive. And so that's what we're talking with Bitergia on, is, and they're going, okay, how can we also sit there and see who's participating a lot in, like, say, Discord, and is like maybe answering some development questions there in their group, or who's over here working on this thing, you know, and getting all of that information, not just Git. And then also on the product side, sitting there going, okay, well, lots of code was written to fulfill the grant. Because the problem is that the open source Git metrics don't always match, you know, product needed metrics. So yeah.
Yeah, so speaking about, because this monitoring, telemetry, whatever was mentioned, just an update, I finalized my proposal for how the strategy, goals, and actions are going to be monitored, with a set of metrics to be followed for each goal, and also defining the red area, what means at risk. Now everything is in a document, but for sure, in my opinion, they shouldn't remain in the document. They should somehow implement it in a kind of dashboard. For the moment, I don't know yet where this dashboard is going to be placed, and more importantly, how the data is going to be acquired in order to fill in the visualization tool. This is one thing. The other one regarding monitoring is when it was at the beginning of this week or the Friday last week, I got access to Discord, being able to install an app for Discord, and I was succeeding in connecting through the Discord API to the channels. So what I did for metrics to be able to extract and understand the discussions and cluster them on topics and so on, everything that I did as an experimentation for sure for metrics will be possible with no additional work for Discord. So as long as this thing is going to be decided, because I think it's not yet, you'll have a full view for both platforms. You are muted, Silona.
If you wanted to check out those two links, Sandeep, you can sit there and see. So, actually, any of us could go set up Cauldron right now to go look and sit there and see what those dashboards look like on Cauldron. We're working with Bitergia on, and one of their products is Grimoire. And that's also, by the way, through the Chaos community, for which I've been a long time member. And they, and so you can sit there and see those dashboards. And in fact, if you wanted to participate in regards to the metrics that those dashboards collect, there's a metrics community over at Chaos where they kind of talk about a lot of that, and that ends up getting fed into Grimoire, as well as another tool that they use called Augur. The Augur tool is a bit different. I don't know if I'm tell you right now, I'm biased. I like the Grimoire Lab stuff better. And I also like the fact that I can hire someone to go and add the new stuff and then open source it afterwards. So I'm kind of like, let's do the Bitergia thing. But that's just because we actually have money over here. So those are, if you want to go check out dashboards, Sandeep, and sit there and see what some of the norms are in open source, I would highly recommend go checking those two out. And then also, like I said, if you want to have influence over the metrics that people start monitoring and why they monitor them and what they don't monitor on purpose, the Chaos community is really great, and their metrics crew is good on a lot of that. But they are, I'll say it again, they are very Git and focus, which is to me a little bit of an issue. And that's one reason why we're trying to work together with Bitergia to sit there and say, how can we not just be Git focused? But for open source for the open source committee, we should be Git focused. So yeah.
All right. If we're good with the framework here, I'll pass it along to George as far as an update from the open source office. Talk a little bit about the maintainer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Terence. Thank you very much, Silona, because everything you said for Bogdan, it's available also for my tasks. I'm really happy because the colleagues that speak today used at least once the maintainer word. And that's why I want to thank Michael Peyton-Jones, especially for his patience, for his feedback to the documents I created. Thank you very much also, Nicolas. We created 3 documents just because we want to split the information to be able to publish it on our public channels. as small pieces, to not give the developers the challenge to make page down, or roll the small wheel of the mouse until they see the whole information. That's why I created, and we decided to create 3 documents. So mainly this week, I updated the feedback request received in the 3 documents about maintainer, the definition, the responsibilities of the role, and the personal development path, or the path. Then I had the lucky meeting with Silona for 1 hour, and I spent time to review all my notes and inserted also the feedback of Silona, the big picture, the role and importance of the security. I understood the legal aspects related to security, things that I didn't know. And I spent some time to integrate and to create and to have a first proposal of these 3 documents. Then I worked and I reviewed the developer advocate program created by Christian, the new role that should join the open source office team. Then I take a look and analyze, long day, the pragma. I reviewed the last video of Charles about pragma and the reports between Intersect MBO and approaches of pragma. And of course, I finished and created the first draft, being very carefully about all the legal aspects related to a labor contract, as Silona said. It's just a draft proposed to be analyzed by a legal consultant or by a legal department. And what I intend to do after the next week, because I will be in vacation in Romania, is the Christian Orthodox Easter season and the Labor Day, 1st of May. Then we'll continue with the compliance with governance policy. I just have to tell Adam, I also love Alex, I also love the document created by Adam about the governance. It's really, really, really useful. Then I will continue to drafting out the OS project checklist templates, the new repo checklist, and to participating to a maintainer trial program near Matt Davis, because we intend to employ maintainers, at least 2 maintainers for each project. And we need a 30 days trial program to be able to evaluate the success of a maintainer into a project, and in collaboration with all the other commissions, project management commission, security commission, that are involved in this role activities. So that's on my side.
Okay, where does those exploding thumbs up come from?
I think it's based on the number of times that you send the reaction.
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. I'm like, this is new to me. Oh no, there's a
I
bunch.
guess.
Or
I
maybe
don't
if
know.
many people do it at the same time today.
Oh,
That's
okay.
possible too.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as anything else from open source office, I will mention this briefly. It's come up now in a couple of different lights. Yes, we are using Bitergia. If you're unaware of what Bitergia is, what the use case is, if you have specific questions for that, I would say feel free to ping me offline from this meeting anyway, and I can provide some more information. But as was mentioned, at least for the framework piece, yes, I do imagine that there's going to be a couple of different dashboard views from Bitergia that we will be able to utilize in our working groups. So more of that to come, but we are still working on the foundational layer for Intersect altogether. So once I have all of those dashboards saved, then we'll move it along. But I imagine things to kind of work side by side here. So, like I said, any questions, ping me offline for the turgid details if you need it. We can move this along here to the committee member appointment process. So I know there was some conversation about how this might happen here, either in June or at the end of Q2. I can go back and look through some of the different notes that we've had, but I was wondering if anybody had any additional input on this. My last understanding, or what I understood by talking with Christian, we'd like to get or use that 2-week period for nominees for somebody who wants to sit in the chair or have a seat on the committee here, and then have a voting process the week after that. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to add. I don't know if this needs to be a small sprint in a working group, 1 month or something like that.
Do we know
if I can
who's
get some
actually
input.
going to run this process? I mean, we've talked about it, but someone needs to actually do the things.
I mean, right. I thought the other question was, is this even something that this committee is, are we not waiting for the result from another committee that is actually more concerned with the voting process?
So I raised my hand
Go ahead, Solana. I'm sorry.
because Nick, you hit it, hammer right. Your hammer, nail, complete connection. So that's the one that the community advisory group is working on, is they're doing some different work in regards to that. And Alex, I think that you've talked to some of them on that, I believe. But yes, I got some positive feedback on some of them because they went and read some of my stuff on typical committee governance. And they're like, oh yeah, no, this is really similar to some of the stuff that we want to. And so they're trying to do something that's, because in an organization like this, even though I sit there and say independence, 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 if you have all the committees being that independent, that's actually not okay. And it's not okay because of legal reasons for being a nonprofit. How the individual groups govern themselves is fine, but with the committees, there are certain levels as to which it has to be predefined in the bylaws. And if they do decide to go for IRS tax status, these things are going to have to be all done in a certain way, especially if you're going for a 501c6, like the Linux Foundation. You have to sit there and prove a bunch of stuff like affiliation and antitrust and a whole bunch of different things along those lines. So I am trying to mentor that group because I've been creating nonprofits for over 20 years and helped write a certification program for it. So we're trying to make sure that we do it that way. I think temporarily, if y'all create things, just don't get too attached, is what I'm saying in regards to it, because there may be other rules that come down later in regards to how that ends up being governed. Thanks.
Okay. So I will compile that in the meeting minutes there, and then I'll work internally with our other committees, or rather the committee advisory group there, and I will bring that back next week with some more information. With that, we'll move on to the leads for the working groups, but let me start with 2 other things. I know we're a little small in this meeting here today. I do want to encourage participation in the different working groups. That there's going to be more to come on that subject. Obviously, I understand from my position, or even from the committee, we can't force anybody to participate, but we are looking for input. My understanding is that there's not a lot of members. There may only be Christian right now that's on the project incubation working group. And Bogdan and George will be rolling off here by the end of May. So any participation that they have in a working group is going to disappear as well. So I just want to make sure that we're not reducing to only 1 or 2 people doing the work, but that those committees are staffed appropriately here. Again, more to come on that specific piece there. I'll ask one question. I guess we can kind of do this as a quorum again. Do we want to reinstate the security working group? Is that something that still needs progress?
So hold on. Is this a separate group to the group that has been working on the security policy? Has that nominally been under the policies working group, or?
No, so I'll take the blame on this. the security working group was removed last week as we were putting up the project framework working group, but to my understanding, that was removed incorrectly. So I didn't realize that until this week when I'd seen the working group notes and meeting minutes. So I'm taking it as my fault because I didn't do enough research on that. But I just want to verify that that's still something that is active because there was quite a bit of conversation around it last week.
Yes.
Okay, so I will put that back up, and then my only deliverable that I'm needing on that is just I know you accepted the edits there, Michael, but I didn't see any updates on that. So I just do need that so I can update the Git book accordingly.
Yep. Yeah, and then the thing is just that as regards like the policy stuff that we have in flight and this trying to work out what we do security wise, I think we need someone else to sort of take over driving that since I'm leaving. So volunteers.
I mean, I was going to volunteer for that, seeing as I've been
Right.
fairly involved in it.
I would be very happy with that.
And that's for policy or policy and security? I'm sorry, just clarifying.
Everything.
That's for security. I don't know if I'll have time for policy as well, but let's start with security and see if we get other volunteers for policy.
Understood.
Include me, please. Of course, I'm just I'm a hired hat here, but please include me on those things because I can drop some templates your way or some checklists in regards to some of those different pieces. So let me know if I can help.
I can also be involved.
Yeah, we must just need someone to sort of take on the hat of making sure things continue to move, basically.
So we've got a security lead with Nick here. If there's no qualms on that, just need a policy lead is what I'm understanding, because I have those.
Or we have to pause it until someone is interested enough to look after it.
What's the current status of the policy working group? I mean,
Well, so really the only thing we produced as part of that was this governance policy draft. I had been hoping that we could also sort of hoover up any sort of small stuff. Like, for example, if we do need to, write a policy that says everyone has to sign CLAs or something, we might want that group to actually draft something. So I think it has a plausible list of things to do, which I have not written down, but I think there is other stuff for it to do. And I would argue that the stuff we've been doing with the governance stuff is not finished. It probably needs revision or to be, shepherded along as we see if people actually want to follow it, or we find problems we need to revise that. So that's very live. But someone needs to push it, otherwise it will just sit there doing nothing.
Does anyone have knowledge as to whether Marcin or Adam would be able to serve at least as an
I think
interim?
Marcin or Adam, I think Marcin or Adam might. So maybe we'll just have to table this and pick it up next time when they're present, see if one of them will take it.
Okay, so I'll leave that as unknown, or I'll try to pop in there to make sure that there's still some function of leadership that way. But we'll put that on the calendar for next week to choose or to find another nominee. Salona?
Yeah, I just wanted to raise a red flag on CLAs not being taken care of yet, because that is a huge liability issue. In the open source governance group that we're doing for a standard, that is one of the musts. You have to have an open source license, you have to have some of these things, and not having the CLAs opens up Intersect to a lot of problems. I'll just tell you that here now from personal experience at the Linux Foundation. So that's totally, it's almost, and it should fall in a way under our purview, but it also should be just Intersects too, Terrence. And that, and I've raised that to Christian before, but it really is something that y'all need to get an open source attorney to create for you on that, because not having it means that you've opened yourself up.
Okay, so that's those CLAs would essentially supersede or fall alongside NDAs?
No. So the CLAs are basically they go along with the licensing agreements, but it's one of those things where a CLA is a contributor licensing agreement, which basically sits there and says, when I contribute, I am allowed to contribute this. And there's also something called DCO, but it breaks all the time. So I don't actually and it's not proven in court, while CLAs are proven in court. And so I don't really recommend the DCOs, even though they're a lot, if Git worked correctly, they would be a lot easier, because it would basically be a tiny SIG that you click every single time you submit a line of code. But the CLAs are basically an overarching one. And sometimes you sign it as an individual and sometimes you sign it as a business. Because if it's the business's IP that you're putting in, the business has to sign an entity contributing license or agreement. And if you're doing it as an individual, you're saying, yes, I have the power to do this. And not having those in place is kind of bad, because if people insert things into the code, even if it isn't, even if there is a license in place, Apache does say you're doing this, you're giving up your IP rights, or you're giving IP rights to the group. Most of the other licenses do not. And you can get into some legal problems if someone inserts stuff that is covered somewhere else. I've actually had an open source project killed this way. So this is me showing one of my scars where someone, Apple, came in and inserted something that was proprietary, and then we couldn't back it out of the code base, and we ended up having to kill the project because it was an IP violation with Apple, and no one wants to go against their attorneys. So yeah, no, I mean it's just reality, right? And, and certain people are not above doing this, and I've seen it more than my fair share of times. When you start doing things that are really meaningful, you start getting those people. And so you really do have to get the CLA taken care of.
So to clarify that, just so I understand the position for open source here, is that something that we need to request basically from Intersect overall to say there needs to be a CLA for working in that group? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that up. That's fine.
Yeah. And honestly, it's good to have a CLA cover everything. Because like sometimes people can go and insert like, hey, it'd be really cool if you did this feature in chat, and then the developer runs off and does the feature and then finds out later that it's patented. Or, some other different games can occur. And I've seen those games all happen in standards more than my fair share of times, because there's a bunch of patent trolls that hang out there. And so it's best to just get an overall CLA for membership.
Okay. Yeah, I just had a meeting, if you will, regarding membership. So that's going to be something that I would imagine moves rather quickly over the next couple of weeks. So I will definitely make sure to take that up, not only with them, but also with our legal correspondence, if you will, right? I'll try to push that along.
And if they need help finding an open source attorney that knows those really well, just ping me, because I've got about 5 on call.
Okay. Roger that. And then I wanted to address your comments there. Again, also related to the meeting that I had surrounding the membership. I'm actually trying to get details on who is a part of our membership. My understanding is that Intersect has approached or gotten close to the 2,000 member mark that we were hoping for. So I'm trying to verify what that exact number is, align that, of course, with Bitergia. This all kind of comes together. But yes, my understanding is that we're needing to get our our committees rather out there to the membership to say, hey, here, come and be a part of what's going on. So I've still got a little bit of understanding to come from the back end on that, but yes, that is, I would say, something in progress here. And I'll speak with Christian as well as to whether or not you can lead a working group, and I'll get back to you on that either individually or next week. I'll make mention of it.
I am trying to go through the process for applying as a member, but voting and all that stuff they didn't like the new hardware wallet I just bought. So I've got to go get a different wallet now. And I'm pissy. I'm learning the hard way how hard it is sometimes to vote and to join things and to aid a community on a personal level. I can't spend my 23,000 ADA. Sorry. That's not accurate, but you get my point.
Sure. So unless there's any other qualms about anything discussed so far, we can move on to open forum if anyone has anything to bring up here. All right. A little aside to something I mentioned earlier, as far as progression in the working groups, again, I'm not going to be here to push or be specifically hard on anybody in particular, or any working group in particular there. But after last week there, just feedback for the committee, as I recognized that we had a lot of discussion last week, breaking into framework and into security, and those, as I could tell when doing the meeting minutes, were things more to be discussed within those working groups. And I want to make sure the committee is able to hit those high points and then take back, like we had today, things that just need to be discussed and researched further. So I am looking at that from the open source committee perspective, running this from more of a high level overview and what's important, what needs to be focused on by each individual working group. So if that needs to separate into an individual tasking or anything like that, just know that in the future, what I'm saying is that I may limit some of that conversation to say, hey, this is getting off track of what we should discuss as a committee, and that needs to go back to a working group. So just kind of giving some forewarning that may be something that comes up in future meetings if we seem to be getting off topic at all. Well, we got pretty close here. We're not bumping up on time, but if there's nothing else, I can give everyone 10 minutes back here. Anything else to add?
Yep, sounds good.
Oh, good.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, and if any of y'all want to talk to me more about the stuff that I'm creating, I'm hoping to get a diagram of all the different pieces as to where everybody is in each of the different committee and who's owning what and all that kind of stuff approved sometime next week. And so what I'm going to first do is get it approved, and then from leadership, and then I'll bring it to each of the different groups for ownership. And of course, obviously the OSC is going to have a big chunk in there. But if any of y'all also want to talk about some of those other pieces too, let me know. You know, like I did a lot of Kickstarters, like I helped do one that raised 1.6, you know, and so it's like, so that's like, you know, like some side knowledge that doesn't actually fit anywhere kind of thing, you know. And so if y'all do want to talk about any of that, let me know, so that I can also help incorporate that in regards to what I'm trying to sketch out. And by the way, guys, I'm going old school. I'm flowcharting that baby. It just got so convoluted that for the different stuff that I created like a new format for flow charting. And I'm like going, okay, this starts here, and then this does this, and then it does this, and then it does this, and then it goes over to here, and then this happens here, and then it comes here. And yeah, so there's a lot going on there. I might be over engineering, but you know, it's best, I think, that everybody's voices get heard in my over engineering process, and then we can trim it down as we go.
All right. Well, if that's everything, I'll give another thank you to Sandeep for stepping into the vice chair role here. Rico.
Rico, you're muted.
Oh no, sorry. I was trying to give a thumbs up, but I'm not used to the app. Sorry about that. My bad.
No worries. Thanks for your participation. All right. Well, again, thank you, Sandeep, for stepping into that vice chair role, and we'll have a couple of things to follow up on next week. And then if there is, yeah, Sandeep, I'll make sure that you are on the meeting invites here for the agenda, and we'll go from there. But thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next week and in the working groups.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.